to call Greg Weissman to deliver a sermon.
Don is a guy who has struggled through life. His upbringing was tragic, fraught with abuse and abandonment. He saw death and destruction in war. He has enjoyed professional and financial success, but his family life is a mess. He is estranged from the mother of his children, and his youngest son feels more closely to his stepfather than to Don. Don has all the money he could ever need, but lives a lonely, solitary life in a one-bedroom apartment. Now, I'm talking, of course, about Don Draper, the protagonist of Mad Men, the popular television drama. The show is an illustration of the truth that money cannot buy happiness. The characters, each more wealthy than the next, come to work in their Midtown Manhattan offices each day and complain to one another about their job, their spouses, their children, their offices, their competitors and their offices, the weather in the summer, the weather in the winter, and perhaps most notably, the changing society of the 1960s. Don is a leader of the pack, both in terms of the weight he pulls in the office and the level of melancholy he brings with him. How can this be? How is it that a man who enjoys so much success can be so miserable? It's possible that happiness is just beyond him. He doesn't have the emotional capacity for it. But the decisions he makes are all motivated by the desire for happiness. He seeks success, hoping financial gain will ease his pain. He's a philanderer, foolishly hoping that physical connection will alleviate his dark loneliness. All of Don's attempts at improving his mood have the result of diminishing his overall quality of life. More money, less happiness. More contact, less connection. Whatever need he seeks to meet, the opposite occurs. His reality is reminiscent of the curses levied on the Israelites in this week's parsha. The Eternal will strike you with madness, blindness, and dismay. You shall grope at noon as the blind grope in the dark. You shall not prosper in your ventures, but constantly be abused and robbed, with none to give help. If you pay the bride price for a wife, another man shall enjoy her. If you build a house, you shall not live in it. If you plant a vineyard, you shall not harvest it. Your ox shall be slaughtered before your eyes, but you shall not eat of it. These curses that threaten the Israelites are not just awful things that may happen to them, as terrible as they may be. These curses reflect the struggle, the unique pain of missing out on desired outcomes, of seeing the promise of future joy become the terror of that joy lost. Being blind in the brightness of noontime, seeing your beloved enamored with another, having the fruits of your labors end up in the hands of someone else. What makes these curses so terrible is how they come so close to being blessings, only to wither and come back to haunt. The message is simple. When the Israelites began to forget themselves, when they stray away from the teachings of relating to one another and worshiping Adonai, the Torah lays before them, the opposite of what they desire will befall them. Through these curses, the Israelites learn that if they forget their true selves, if they seek to be a people other than the covenantal Am, devoted to their Torah and their God, pain and suffering will be the result. Fortunately, just a few verses later, we learn that the Israelites can right those wrongs and return to the path that God has set for them. At the beginning of chapter 30, we read, "When all these things befall you, the blessing and the curse which I have set, take them to heart amidst the various nations, and return to the Eternal your God, you and your children, with all your heart and all your soul. Then the Eternal your God will restore your fortunes and take you back in love." Return. Shuv. Teshuvah. with all of their soul and all of their heart, Israel can return to God, return to the good, return to the ways set before them. This is not something they can do lightly, without much effort, or half-heartedly. They must use their whole hearts and their whole souls to examine their whole selves. It's not just a surface cleansing or a new coat of paint. It's deep introspection. The shofar that we blow each morning on Elul represents the depth of this reflection. It represents bringing forth from within the cry that comes from the center of our beings. It is not like other instruments played from the lips or our tongues or by our fingers, our external organs. The power of the shofar comes from our breath, from our neshama. Just as we access our neshama, bringing it forth to call the shofar. In Elul, we seek to access our neshama, the deep souls within us, and bring them into the world. That is the essence of teshuvah, the act of wholeheartedly searching for the truth of one's being and striving to bring it into fruition in our lives. When we do teshuvah, not only seek to change the behaviors and decisions that have brought us and others to anguish in the past year, we really must search to find our true selves, which have been hidden from us by our past mistakes. It is not just about finding what is missing or what are we doing wrong. It takes the courage to wonder about the type of person we always should have been, but never had the courage or the strength to become. It's not an easy task. It takes creativity in finding those pointed questions that will challenge our most basic assumptions about who we are. It takes courage to start down a path that might end in the realization that we are not the people we ought to be, are destined to be, need to be. We can ask ourselves, what could I be doing for myself and others that I've never thought of? What are those desires, those instincts that I have dismissed in the past because they weren't who I am or who I think I am? Comfort in knowing who I am is great. But to truly do teshuvah, we must not only explore, but challenge that comfort. Question the idea. Why? Because in part, who I am today, is a result of those dismissals, the opportunities to become our true selves that we've left by the wayside. Changing our behavior in the future, which may bring those in our lives temporal happiness, is not fully teshuvah. We must discover who we really are and seek to make that the person who fills our shoes and lives our lives. The rut in which Don Draper is stuck suggests that what he really needs to do is teshuvah. Discovering our true selves, aspects of our identity that are hidden from us, is not easy. We're at HUC. We're reflective. We do it all the time. But those reflections we do are trying to figure out what we are right now, how we appear to others. We need to seek to discover aspects of ourselves in which we're not well acquainted. Psychologists refer to this other self as the non-self. The non-self is that part of us to which we are not attuned, which we do not regularly see and interact with. Nonetheless, it's a part of the core of who we are, affecting and informing our choices and behaviors. It's those things that we could have been, our suppressed desires and memories. We have a way of keeping our non-selves from the world, believing that social norms and expectations of us don't want that non-self to show its face. Accessing it takes dedicated, deliberate actions. How do we do it? By challenging ourselves to try new things, to have new experiences, in some ways to be someone that we're not. Take up a new hobby, learn to play an instrument, learn a new language. All of these allow us to explore who we are more deeply. They may satisfy some desires that have lain dormant for all these years. And they help us create new pathways into who we are. Essentially, be an old dog that learns new tricks. Learn to seek new emotional levels, new capacities for yourself. Force yourself to think. sometimes intentionally, sometimes perhaps unconsciously? What desires that you have that you never realized? The Gemara suggests that in order to temper the judgment of Rosh Hashanah, we might consider Shinui Hashem, changing our name, or Shinui Ma'aseh, changing our deeds. Rabbi Yitzchak's teachings may appear to be just surface level, do differently or hide who you were, but he may also have struck upon this deep reflection and seeking of the non-self. It's easy to say, do better next time, change those behaviors. But changing one's name, changing one's deeds, doing them together, suggests a deep level of self-improvement. Perhaps Rabbi Yitzchak was telling us that tshuva is not about change, but about self-discovery. Perhaps he was attuning us to that deep reflection, the seeking of the true, authentic self that is essential to tshuva. Looking back now to Don and where he's been in this most recent year, things have happened. He's married again. His ad agency is finding success. His kids are, as best they can, settling into their new reality of 2 sets of parents, 2 homes. More importantly, something's happened to Don. He's happy. He and his wife can communicate in times of good and times of bad. He stopped running from his secret past of an abusive childhood and military desertion. To put it quite simply, Don has stopped running from his true self and finally embraced who he really is. No longer is he trying to please his ex-wife, his partners, or the image of himself that he has created. As a husband, he is realizing that his relationship with his wife is more important than meeting material needs. As a colleague, he's adjured his coworkers to similarly seek happiness and a steady home life. He's found the ability to connect the disparate parts of his life and his psyche, and finally begin to learn who he is. Is it who Ashir, who is rich, the one who is happy with his lot, who knows his real self, and feels comfortable being that person, both in private and in public? Author George Eliot wrote, "It's never too late to be what you might have been." This is the message of Elul, upon which we ought to meditate as we prepare ourselves for the Yemim Noraim. During this month, we have the opportunity not just to think about how next year can be a better one. We have the chance to look introspectively, with our whole heart, with our whole soul, and do the return that Deuteronomy suggests. We can find out what it is we might have been, avoid the mistakes, the curses that have befallen us in the past, and enter into 5773 with the mentality that tshuva is not about changing who we are. It's about figuring out who we are supposed to be.
Francisco.